move straight into our discussion room, as I earlier mentioned, we all know that every country has its own laws and regulations that govern how they go about doing business. And so for one, it is necessary for everyone to know about the rules and regulations that govern their country to be able to operate in a smooth environment. In Ghana, for instance, we are regulated by the Companies Act 2019 as amended. And then I know of Nigeria also operating under CAMA, that is the Companies and Allied Matters Act. I also know that Cote d'Ivoire and Senegal are also operating under the OHADA framework. But what does this act or the law say? That is what we want to learn today by discussing with our partners. They are going to walk us through and tell us more about what it is in those acts and laws when it comes to doing business in Ghana. I believe that there might definitely be some similarities, but there might equally be some differences as well when it comes to each countries, as we are going to discuss. So I will start from our host country, which is Ghana. And I would like Beatrice to, first of all, let us know the types of businesses that are permissible to both local and foreign investors seeking to invest in any sector in Ghana. Beatrice, thank you very much. I would like you to take this question for us.
Thank you very much, Jane. Good morning, everyone. You are welcome to today's webinar. My name is Beatrice. Thanks for the introduction earlier, Jane. In Ghana, the various types of company registrations available for foreign investors are the limited liability companies. That's the same. We also term that as company limited by shares. We have the external companies, that is there for branch offices, companies that have originally been incorporated in another country and they seek to register a branch office in Ghana. We term that as external company registration. And we have the public limited companies and the company limited by guarantee. That is for not-for-profit organizations. The minimum equity requirement is very crucial for company registration in Ghana, in the sense that if you are a trading company, the minimum equity requirement for a wholly owned trading company is $1 million. For manufacturing, export trading, and investment portfolio, there's no minimum equity. However, I always advise that you have a stated capital of at least $50,000 US to enable you to secure one GIPC automatic quota. Then we come to the industries that provide services. For them, the minimum equity requirement is $500,000. But as a foreigner, you can join with a Ghanaian, just that the Ghanaian has to have a percentage of 10%, and you have to have at least 90% of, if it's a joint venture. But if it's a joint venture and it's going to be services, the minimum equity requirement will be $200,000. When you go into the GIPC Act, Section 27 of the GIPC Act, it states some permissible activities that are reserved for only Ghanaians, meaning if you are a foreigner and you want to engage in these activities, irrespective of the type of company that you seek to register, you'll not be able to engage in that. So as a foreigner, you will not be allowed to operate a barbering shop in Ghana. You'll not be allowed to also operate a salon. You are not allowed to engage in petty trading or hawking or printing of recharge scratch card for telecommunication services. You're also not allowed to engage in any service that will involve the production of exercise books and other basic stationery. And also you are not allowed to run a retail of finished pharmaceutical products, or the production and supply and retail of sachet water and all aspects of pool betting, except for football betting. So basically, these are the types of companies that are available for foreign investors in Ghana. Thank you very much, Jane.
Thank you too, Ifya, for the clarification. I would like to move straight to Nigeria. I have Dawn ready from Nigeria to take this for us. Dawn, can you share more light on what it is in Kama, the types of businesses that one can operate, whether the person is a local or a foreign investor. Given what Beatrice has told us about what Ghana permits, is there any similarities or differences when it comes to Nigeria?
Thank you very much, Jane. So in Nigeria, it's a little bit similar to Ghana, but just a few discrepancies. For example, the locals in Nigeria, they're allowed to register what we call business name or sole proprietorship. So it can be a sole proprietorship or a partnership, but categorized under business name. It's limited to just locals. And then they're also allowed to register private and public companies, limited by shares, and also unlimited companies. For business purposes, these are the ones that you're allowed to register. For non-business purpose, you're allowed to register a company limited by guarantee and also a non-for-profit, non-governmental organization. So if you don't want to engage in business operations, you can either go for company limited by guarantee or company or a non-governmental organization. So basically the difference between these two, they're actually not for profit, but for companies limited by guarantee, they can make profits, but they have to plow back that profit into the company to achieve the objectives of the company. So you are not allowed to spend or make use of those profits for your personal benefits like a normal company would, which is just to make profits and all of that. And then there is no share capital, required share capital for a company limited by guarantee. Then in Nigeria as well, most non-governmental organizations are usually registered, most organizations that are registered under the NGO are usually churches, mosques, charitable organizations, whilst for company limited by guarantee, it's usually for organizations that are focused on a certain objective. So let's say a non-governmental organization that is focused on education in the fashion space or in commerce and all of that. Then for locals, the required share capital, or the minimum share capital is 100,000 naira. But it is very common for people to do 1 million share capital because the filing fees are similar. So people tend to go towards registering companies with 1 million share capital, hence the popularity of such share capital. For foreign investors, on the other hand, they are only allowed to register companies, either a private company, limited liability company, or an unlimited company. So foreigners are not allowed to register sole proprietorship, which can be referred to as business names. And the required minimum share capital for such companies has to be 100 million share capital. So this share capital has to be paid up or issued amongst the shareholders. However, you don't have to show proof of paying up the share capital to the regulatory body in charge. But sometimes when you want to obtain certain licenses, you would be required to show proof of this share capital being paid up. And then for non-business activities, of course, you can register a company limited by guarantee and a non-governmental organization. So that's basically what foreigners and business and locals are allowed to register in Nigeria.
Okay, thank you very much, Dawn, for the presentation on this question. I would like to move to Estelle from Senegal and Cote d'Ivoire. Estelle, can you share with us what it is in OHADA that is different from what Dawn and Beatrice have shared with us? You can take it country by country, so you can decide to start with Senegal and end with Cote d'Ivoire. Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone for this opportunity. I would like to say that Cote d'Ivoire is a land of opportunities. Unlike other countries, whether you are a local or a foreigner, you can create a business, establish your own business without any problem. There are no restrictions, and you can operate in any business sector. Now, in Ivory Coast and Senegal, if you want to enter into trade, if you want to enter into real estate, whatever the business you want to do, you can do it. So that is in Cote d'Ivoire and in Senegal, and that's the advantage they offer. In Cote d'Ivoire, there are a lot of innovations in the laws and in tax and also in the legal framework, allowing all investors to establish their own business in the country. Senegal and Ivory Coast are governed by the OHADA business system, which harmonizes business law amongst the Francophone countries in Africa. However, they have different codes, business codes in their respective countries. In Cote d'Ivoire, you can invest and create your business without any issue. There are two types that you can establish. One is the sole proprietorship, and one is the legal entity, rather, and then we also have the individual entity. But you can put in place a sole proprietorship, you can put in place a limited liability company, you can also put in place a partnership. These are the types of companies we have in Cote d'Ivoire. Thank you.
Wow, that is quite interesting. Thank you, Estelle, for that. All right. So I would like I believe that there are some form of requirement when it comes to these types of business, when you want to register any of these types of business, the information or documentation that will be needed to successfully register any of these businesses you have all mentioned. I would want you to help us delve into it. So Estelle, I want you to take us through first with Cote d'Ivoire. What requirements are needed of anybody, whether the person is a local or a foreign investor? What does the person need to successfully or duly incorporate their business in Cote d'Ivoire?
Thank you, Jane. To register a business in Cote d'Ivoire, you need to, first of all, define the type of business that you would like to put in place. Is it a sole proprietorship? Is it a limited liability company? And based on that, there are documentations that you would have to supply. So if you are a small trader or a sole proprietor, then you can have about 2 partners to start. There are 2 types of documents needed. One is an identification document, either your passport, if you have from the ECOWAS member states, or your identity card if you are from Cote d'Ivoire. And then you also need to give a justification of your address. So that you could use your utility bill, which has your name and address on it. And then you also have to provide documentation to prove that you don't have a criminal record. So that should be something that is not older than 3 months, a police report. And then you add on all the other information to establish your company. In Senegal also, once you have all your documents in place, they have a platform, an online platform, and you can put this online, and all these documents which you would upload onto the website will be sent, a confirmation will be sent to you by email, and then you can get your business registered. So whether it's, if you want to establish an NGO or an association, there's another office that is in charge of the registration of that, and you would need to work with them. They don't have an online platform, but for businesses, profit-making businesses, you can do this online. In Côte d'Ivoire and in Senegal, there are a lot of similarities between the two countries. But here's a summary of the 2 steps in putting in place a business in Côte d'Ivoire, Senegal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Estelle, for the clarification on the requirement. We'll continue on our second discussion. Once again, I am moving straight to Ifya from Ghana for her to tell us more about the requirements that is required of anybody who wants to set up any of the types of businesses she earlier mentioned. Thank you, Ifya. If you can take us now.
All right, thank you very much, Jane. To my French people, I sincerely apologize. I learned you didn't hear me when I gave an overview of the types of companies that are available for foreigners in Ghana. So let me just give a brief overview of it. I mentioned that in Ghana, the types of companies available for foreign investors are the limited liability company, external company registration, that is what we term as the branch office. We also have the company limited by guarantee. Those are for NGOs. We have the public limited companies. I mentioned that in Ghana, if you're a foreigner and you want to register a trading company, you'll be required to have a minimum equity of $1 million. If it is going to be investment portfolio, manufacturing or export trading, there is no minimum equity for that. But I advise that you always have to have a stated capital of $50,000. And I also mentioned that for service industries, the minimum equity is $500,000. Thank you. So moving on to the second question. Thank you again, Jane. To be able to register a company in Ghana, there are several key pieces of information for every type of company registration. So basically, you have to have a structure, just as Estelle mentioned, that you should be able to know the structure of business you want to register. Is it going to be an external company or limited liability or an NGO? So you have to provide the company name. You have to also define the activity. You have to state all that you want to do. That is the business activity. And you have to have information for the share structure. If, let's say, you are 2 foreigners and the percentage is going to be 50-50, 50%, you have to indicate it. You have to have an email address for the company, an office address, and also the information of the directors. You have to have at least 2 directors, 1 or more shareholders, an auditor, and a company secretary. You also have to indicate, you have to have a postal address all in Ghana. We will need the passport copies of the passports, ID card of all the foreigners. That will be the directors, shareholders, secretary, and you have to have an auditor and a renowned auditing firm in Ghana. So basically, these are the information that will be required for every company registration, except for NGOs, where you wouldn't be required to provide information for the shares because it is not for profit organization. For external company registration, you'll be asked to provide them copies of the parent company registration documents. I mentioned that external company is a company that has already been incorporated in your home country and you want to register a branch office. So the registrar would want you to provide the company registration documents from your home country. You also have a local manager for the external company. So we will need the information for the local manager. The information is his passport ID, his residential address in Ghana, his mobile number and email address. So basically, these are the information that you should note if you want to incorporate any company in Ghana. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. I'm sure our audience are taking note of all this. I would have to go to Nigeria for us to see what is required of us if we want to set up a business in Nigeria. Dawn, if you are ready, kindly take us through.
All right, thank you very much, Jane. So in Nigeria, like I earlier mentioned, for foreign investors, you can either register as a private limited liability company or public limited liability company or an unlimited company. You can also register as a representative company, but the only difference is when you're registering as a representative or liaison office, it's still the same structure as a normal company, just that you can engage in business activities because it's basically just to generate business for the parent and for market research purposes. You can also register with any of the free trade zones in Nigeria. People usually do that, or most foreigners do that, in order to enjoy tax benefits and some other incentives. So straight to the requirements for registration. Basically, it's just the personal details of the officers of the company and also of the company, such as a name. So the very first thing we do in Nigeria, and I would also like to state that in Nigeria, registration of companies is done online. So we make use of documents or details, e-copies most of the time. So we need a name because it's very important for registration in Nigeria. And we usually do a name search just to confirm if somebody is using that name. And then if the name is available, we go ahead to apply for a name. And once it's approved, then we would proceed with the registration proper by getting details of the directors, supposed directors, shareholders, the secretary, and the witness. So for every registration, a witness is required. So a witness is basically just a normal witness. It doesn't mean that the person has a stake in the company or the person is allotted a particular amount of shares. No, it's just somebody to witness the registration of such a company. So, and a company can have just one director, but we usually advise 2 directors because of operational purposes. So sometimes you might want to get a license or you might want to get something, and if one person is not available, then you are left handicapped. But if you have 2 directors, then the other director can function on behalf of the company. So even though the law allows you to register it with just one director, it's also advisable, if you can, you should register with 2 directors. Then moving forward, we also make use of passport photographs, so e-passport photographs, signature of the director, shareholder, witness, and the secretary, the address. So there has to be a location, a verifiable address for each of the officers of the company. And if you are not based in Nigeria, because the registration can be done online, Firmus Advisory actually offers virtual office address, which can be used for these officers and also for the company. So we need an address, very descriptive address that must include the local government area and all of that. And then we also need phone number, email, and also a valid means of identification. Very important. So if you supply all of these details, then we'll move on to the company. For the company, we would need the address of the company, the email address, being that it's a new company, if you don't have an address, like I said earlier, we would also be willing to offer such an investor an address to make use of at Firmus Advisory. So the address as well. And also, you are expected to upload a memorandum and article of association. But if you do not have, or you cannot draft one yourself, the regulatory body, which is the Corporate Affairs Commission in Nigeria, actually provides a memorandum and articles of association. So what you just do, you adopt the article, and the MEMAT, like we call it for short, is actually in compliance with the law, which is CAMA 2020. So you don't need to be worried that, oh, it doesn't cover certain areas. Actually in compliance with the law. It may not touch some specific things that you would want to touch if you drafted it yourself, but it is 100% fine. So MEMAT would also be uploaded. And then for the shareholding, there are people we call persons of significant control in Nigeria. So typically it's the shareholders that owns the company. So when somebody owns 5% and above, or is allocated 5% and above shares in a company, such person is referred to as a person of significant control. So once all of these details are uploaded, and then also the details of the person who is carrying out the registration on your behalf would also be uploaded. Then if it's a representative company, you would also be required to upload the certificates of the parent company, certificates of incorporation of the parent company. So those are basically the details that are required for registration of companies in Nigeria. And also, I would like us to note that you can engage in any kind of business in Nigeria as a foreigner, except certain businesses that are prohibited, such as sale of narcotics, sale of arms and ammunition, and which is generally prohibited both for locals and foreigners. But you're allowed to go into any area and own it 100% without local participation, meaning without local shareholders. Yeah.
This is quite interesting. Okay, thank you very much, panelists, on this question or this discussion. It's quite interesting to know all that would be needed of you, whether you want to register in Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria, or Senegal. I'm sure you have taken notes of all these requirements. We are going to have our next discussion. Even in Ghana here, from my own experience in the Ghanaian industry, I know that there are some avoidable mistakes that people make during registration of businesses, which leads to unnecessary delays and having the issue or the struggle of having to start the process all over again. Our panelists will have to throw more light on this so that we can take note of them when we are considering registering a business in any of these West African countries. Let me give the baton to Beatrice from Ghana to start with.
Okay, so one mistake that I've observed many investors, like even both foreign investors and local entrepreneurs make, is that when they want to register their businesses, they tend to lump multiple business activities together. So you can have a company with an activity that falls under manufacturing, trading, services, like everything. The person would want to do everything at a time. When you do that, it will attract a higher minimum equity. So let's say I mentioned early on that for manufacturing companies, there is no minimum equity. If you are going to be a manufacturing company and you decide to add an activity that involves buying and selling, that makes it trading. So it means it will attract a minimum equity of $1 million US. Moreover, when you tend to lump all these activities together, it will attract approval from multiple regulators. So let's say you said you are going to sell a product that will involve registration with the Food and Drug Authority. If you are also going to add on an activity that will attract an approval from another agency, that will be a lot. So I always advise that you focus on one or two core activities, then you can expand it as you in the subsequent years, because there's an option for that where you amend the nature of business. And other times too, one mistake that I've observed is that foreign investors, they tend to choose a restrictive business name. So an example is having a name like Modcast Trading Limited or Limited Company. If you decide to go for a name that would restrict you to a particular or a single business activity, it wouldn't help you if you want to expand the activity. So I will advise that you choose a generic name. You can make it Modcast Ghana Ltd, and that is fine. You can engage in trading, or let's say you can engage in manufacturing, and in the subsequent years, then you can add on other business activity. And I think the last one that I would want to talk about is designing letterheads or company materials before the company is incorporated. Most people do that before incorporation, or maybe in the process of incorporating the company. Then they will start designing stamps, company stamps or letterheads, even before the certificate is issued. That is not advisable because the registration goes through several processes. It goes through several processes. So using materials prematurely can cause complications, because we've had that issue where the person, the business name was queried by the registrar, and the person said that I've already used the name for company stamp or letterhead, so I can't change it. When it happens like that, you have to blame yourself, because every time you have to wait for the certificate of incorporation to be issued before you can go ahead to print your company documents or materials or anything you want to do with the company name. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. For this one, I just want to have a follow-up question, Beatrice. You mentioned that some of the errors talk about people who have to lump their activities all in one, and then that also makes it difficult when it comes to the capital requirement. But then the new act permits people to do a lot of things at the same time. I mean, without also stating their activities on the business registration. What advice will you give on that? In what situation will it be important for somebody to specify their activities? Because the law says that you may choose to or not to. So in what situations would you advise people to state their activities?
All right, thank you very much for the question, Jane. So this is actually an advice. You are free to add on so many activities, but for the purpose of the minimum equity requirements, so let's say a foreign investor would like to engage in manufacturing or export trading or investment portfolio. I mentioned that with these kind of activities, there is no minimum equity requirement, but I advise that you should have a stated capital of at least $50,000 US to enable you to have, to secure one GIPC automatic quota. If you decide to add on activities like buying and selling, that will make it trading. It will attract a higher minimum equity requirement. So this is an advice just for the person to focus more on the core activities. If your core activities is going to be trading, then fair enough, you can actually begin with trading, just that you have to take notes of the minimum equity requirements. So this is an advice for everybody who would want to engage in, let's say, manufacturing or trading or export trading. It is always better, if you don't have the capital now, it is better to start with the one with the less minimum equity requirements.
Thank you very much, Beatrice, for the clarification. I'll hand the baton over to Dawn to walk us through what the CAMA says.
All right, thank you, Jane. So in Nigeria, one of the very first mistakes foreigners make when registering businesses or even locals, because when you enter into a joint venture with a local as a foreigner, the laws applicable to foreigners would also apply to the company, is the fact that they choose the wrong structure of business. The wrong structure in the sense that for foreigners, you're only allowed to register a company, limited liability company or unlimited company. You're not allowed to register a sole proprietorship. And once you've gone ahead to commence with sole proprietorship, then you'll be issued a query when you start uploading the details of the officers of the company and it is saying that, oh, there's a foreigner there. Then also the share capital. So for share capital, previously it used to be 10 million naira share capital required for foreign participation or foreign investors. And not a lot of people believe or are aware that it has been increased to 100 million. So sometimes some people would have gone ahead, they've picked the right structure, which is a company, and then they've also logged in the share capital and made payments. Upon review of the application, then a query will be issued that, oh, this share capital is not in compliance. And that is a lot of work. It would destabilize you because you would have to increase the filing fees and then comply with the stamp duty and CAC filing fees as well. So that's something that you need to focus on and be aware of, that the required share capital is 100 million. So you need to take note of the share capital and then the business structure. And also the name. Like Beatrice said, a name is very, very important. And the Corporate Affairs Commission, which is CAC, they are very careful to look at the kind of names that you apply with. For example, when a name has been trademarked and registered, you can't use such a name or you can apply for such a name. But most people would go ahead to start making branded materials and all of that, even before they register the business, when the law specifically states that you have to register your business within 28 days of commencement of business. But we usually advise that you register your business before you even commence so that you have everything in place. The name is already settled. If the name you decide to use or the name that came to you in a vision or whatever is similar to what somebody is already using, you can quickly change it. You would have time to sit down before people, potential customers, start learning of that name. You can quickly change it. Now, a name doesn't have to be exactly word for word for it to be denied. With experience, we've noticed that once a name sounds alike as another name, it will be denied, because the basis for this is just that, oh, the common man has to be able to distinguish products, distinguish between company A and company B and their products as well. So when I see the name of a company and its products on the shelf at the supermarket, I should be able to tell that, okay, this product or this name is different from this other name. The fact that they are similar doesn't mean they are from a group of companies. So that's the basis. So they always approve names that are different and names that have not been already registered. So don't go ahead and start carrying on business activities when the name of the business has not been settled. And even when a name has been approved, because name application and search is the first stage of every company registration. Even when it has been approved, it is also advisable that you wait till you get your certificate of incorporation, because over time, I've experienced that sometimes a name might be approved at the early stage, but just before the certificate of incorporation is issued, CAC can find out that, oh, somebody has actually used this name, or somebody was in the process of registering a business with such a name or a similar name before you logged in your registration. So in that instance, they can't go ahead and approve such a name. And also, if maybe through an oversight or whatever the case might have been, and they approve the name for you, and a company learns that, or they do a search and they find out that, oh, somebody is trying to register a name that is similar to ours, they can send a notice or a petition to CAC that, oh, please don't approve such a name because it's going to cause issues for our business. So until a certificate of incorporation is issued, you can't categorically state that that name belongs to you. Even when it has been issued, there are instances where another company can call for withdrawal of such certificates because they feel that, oh, such a name is similar and probably during registration that was not taken into account. Then another mistake people also make is the fact that they fill in wrong details for the officers of the company, such as not spelling names correctly, filling in wrong phone numbers or email addresses, both for the officers and the company as well. So you need to bear in mind that when registering a company, the details on your incorporation documents are what will be available. It's a public document as well. It will be available to the public. When anybody goes on to search for this company, they will see these details. And if they want to make contact with you, if those details are not correct, then you've just lost potential customer or an investor or an information that would have been very, very helpful to you as a company. So you have to ensure that you go through whatever details that are being uploaded and you upload the right information. Although CAC allows you to change some of these details if you notice that there was an error that was made, but of course, it's going to cost you money after registry and a certificate has been issued. So if you want to change those details, then you would have to pay another filing fee to correct those details. Then also submitting the wrong document. So where you submit the wrong ID and all of that, such registration will be queried and you'll be asked to upload the right documents. Then there's something that used to be in practice, but it stopped and then it has come back again, which is proficiency certificates. So before, CAC used to ask for proficiency certificates for certain kinds of businesses who engage in professional services. So let's say you want to register a school or a pharmacy. You need proficiency certificate just means a document that is issued by the regulatory body guiding that profession, that you are free or you are licensed to practice either as a teacher or a school owner or a pharmacist. So you need to upload such documents aside from the other documents that are required by CAC. So sometimes some people do not upload such documents and neither of the directors in the company have such documents. Now, when you do that and such a registration is queried, you are then left handicapped. So you start looking for how to change some of the directors or how to get that registration. Even for real estate businesses, you also need proficiency certificate. So that's something that you need to take note of to upload such a document. And even for the MEMAT, so I mentioned earlier that CAC provides a MEMAT for you to just adopt during registration, but you can decide to draft yours and upload yours. Now, in the event that you decide to draft yours, please ensure that you give such job to a professional, in the sense, a lawyer, a very good lawyer at that, so that you don't end up with a tacky document. It's better you adopt what is provided by CAC than you go ahead and draft a mediocre document. So if you want to draft your memorandum and article of association, make sure it is not poorly drafted. It is drafted by a very good professional, a lawyer, and they observe or they take note of all of the things that you want to be stated on the document. So these are some of the mistakes that people make as well. And also, finally, I would also like to state that although you would not be allowed, but some people think that when you want to register a company, you can just slot in group on the name. No, there are some names that are not allowed. So except it's actually a group of companies, you can't have group in the name. You can't have a single company and then you say, oh, I want to register as a group. So if it's a group, it has to be a group of companies. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dawn. But I think the increment in their share capital is quite really high, because from 10 million to 100 million, that's quite high, but it's very interesting to know. And I'm
it's
sure
in Naira. You know, we do Naira in Nigeria. Ghana does in dollars. So
okay.
We
So
understand, but there are also some very nice benefits and incentives for foreigners in Nigeria. So don't be scared.
We will come to Nigeria. Okay, so I guess our audience are also following this discussion, and I'm sure you've taken notice of all the do's and don'ts when it comes to common mistakes that people make, so that you wouldn't have to force a consultant to use a name that you want. If they ask you to check it before you proceed, please accept and do a search before you proceed, rather than just telling them, go ahead with the name. And then at the end of the day, you would have to bounce back and change the name, delaying your entire process. Thank you very much, panelists, for the clarification. If you are here, please kindly walk us through the mistakes that people make when it comes to registration in Senegal and Cote d'Ivoire. You can take it country by country. If it is also similar in both countries, please share with us. Don't worry about that.
Cette erreur grave. Vous avez la parole, Esther. No problem. There are many mistakes that investors make, and they are similar to Cote d'Ivoire and Senegal. The name of the company is very important. Sometimes investors take name, and then when they submit their document, the name are already taken and the document is rejected. So it's a same mistake that we notice in Senegal and Cote d'Ivoire. We have another mistake. For instance, like my colleague said, the accumulation of services. For instance, someone say, I want to do import, export, I want to do real estate, transportation. Accumulation of services is complex and to bring a problem because it will impact your payment of your fees. It's a investors don't know that if you accumulate services, this will impact your taxes. Whether in Cote d'Ivoire or Senegal, investors, I'll start with Cote d'Ivoire. When you want to register a company, they will ask you, what is your capital for the first year, or your income for the first year? And unfortunately, many investors don't know how many revenue they will generate in the first year. So if you don't have this will really impact the license, because this information will really help you to have the license, because they want to know how much revenue will you have for the first year. This will help them calculate your taxes. It's a very important information that you need to provide. For instance, if you give a figure and unfortunately you don't know that at the end of the first year you will be able to generate that revenue, it will really have an impact on your taxes. For instance, in Senegal, the structure of the company is also important. For instance, if you have a sole proprietorship company, you have taxes you pay. If you have a limited liability company, you have certain taxes that you pay. So it's important to know the structure of the company before you start the registration process. Some people start the registration and later on they realize that they have made a mistake, and this will really complicate the situation. Am I creating a sole proprietorship company or a limited liability company? So from the beginning, you need to ask the correct question. Why do I have to create this company?
If you're an individual and a lot of your people, and you don't have a lot of partners in your business, then you can have a sole proprietorship. But if there are several people involved, then you might want to mitigate the risks. So in terms of the legal side, it's very important to understand this and how it works in Cote d'Ivoire and in Senegal. A lot of businesses exist, and there are a lot of people who have individual and sole proprietorship companies, and they want to create an additional one. If you want to create a new one, a new company, you have to make sure that you are not owing taxes. Otherwise, your request will be denied. It's only when you have no tax to pay, or you're not owing in any form, that you can open a new additional company. And when it comes to a limited liability company, you have to also make sure that if you have your own company, you have everything in place and in order in terms of taxes, registration, etc. Otherwise, you will not be allowed to be a shareholder or a partner on the new company. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Estelle, and thank you for getting back to us. Okay, so like I mentioned, our last but not least discussion is to look at the post-incorporation services. I have already explained that it actually becomes the priority of most of the investors to have their businesses registered, but nothing more is important to them. But then ignoring some of those things eventually may lead to non-compliance or default issues with some of the regulatory agencies in the sector of operation. And for this matter, I will want us to sail back to Nigeria so that Dawn can walk us through some of the post-incorporation services that are very necessary for every business operator. Thank you very much, Dawn. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Jane. Okay, so in Nigeria, immediately you register your company, the next step is to get your tax compliance. So typically, we have what we call tax identification number, which you need to obtain from the Federal Inland Revenue Service. And then when you obtain that, there's a new, Then when you get that, there is a new tax platform that was just brought in, which is called Tax Pro Max. So you validate the tax. And one of the benefits of that is when you go online on the FRS portal to check your tax identification number, you will find it there. You find your business details there as well. And then when you want to open a bank account, most banks will be able to verify your tax identification number as well. And then for filing of taxes, you can easily do that online once you complied with the tax formats and not just obtaining the tax identification number. So if you've obtained the number before and you've not validated it on tax formats platform, it is advisable that you do that. Then after that, you are also expected to open a bank account for the business, which is very, very important. And then protect your intellectual property. Protecting intellectual property is something that is so important because every aspect of that business or that company is an asset. The name, the logo, you have to protect it. Your trade secrets, you don't necessarily need to register it, but you need to put structure in place to ensure continues to be a trade secret. And most importantly, you need to register with the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission. And we had Madam Uchena speak from the commission earlier on at the beginning of the webinar. So that is one commission that I know, as well as CAC. They are very responsive, so they don't have complications or issues with registration. Very effective. Registrations are very, very fast. So as a foreigner, you need to obtain your NIPC certificate by registering with them. If you're bringing in foreign technology into Nigeria, you need to also register with the National Office for Transfer, Technology Acquisition and Promotion, which is NOTA. And then you also need to obtain expatriate quota, business permit, then residence and work permit. So expatriate quota is simply you need to get a quota for foreigners who will be coming into the country. Yes, you can register your business or your company online, but in the event that you want to be present, you want to come into the country, then the company needs expatriate quota. And then the company needs a business permit. It is a foreign company, so it needs that business permit to carry on business in Nigeria. And for the work and residence permit, these individuals coming in under the company also require a work and residence permit to be able to work and reside in Nigeria. It is a company that has an expatriate quota that can apply for its members or its staffs to get a work and residence permit. So it's very important that you obtain this. And then a certificate of capital importation. As a foreign company, you would want to move money back to your home country or outside the country. So you need to get that as well. The licenses, so different businesses in different sectors. If you fall under a sector that requires a license, then you should obtain such license, because non-compliance can result in fines, penalties, which is generally not good for the reputation of your business. So you need to obtain such licenses. You need to get contracts. So if you have employees, get an employment contract. Very important. A company needs to have structure, and some of this structure are done with contracts. So you need contracts, either a partnership agreement, founders agreement, shareholders agreement, employment agreement, sales agreement, and a host of other contracts. And then if you fall under businesses that are required to obtain a SCUMO, which is simply an anti-money laundering certificate stating that you are aware of the fact that such a business can be used for money laundering, but you will not be engaging in such. So businesses like real estate, car businesses, supermarkets, and a host of others are required to obtain such registration. So if you are required to do that, then you should obtain those certificates. Even at the stage of opening a bank account, you'd be requested by the bank to obtain such certificates. For example, money lending businesses, they are required to obtain a money lending license, and some other businesses as well. So if you're a business in the food sector or cosmetic sector and are required to register with NAFDAC, which is the body in charge of regulating food and drugs and cosmetic products in Nigeria, then you'd also be required to obtain a permit from them as well. Then after registration with CAC, 18 months after registration, you are expected to file annual returns yearly. So these annual returns, they are different from tax. People confuse it and think that annual return is the same as tax. Tax is to the federal and state bodies, while annual return is to the CAC, which is in charge of company operations. So annual returns basically just puts your business on active or inactive. When you don't file annual return, your business will be put on inactive, because CAC would not know whether you are operating. They will know whatever is going on in that business. They are not aware. But when you file annual returns, then the business will be put on active, because they get yearly updates of what happens in the business. You file your states, your financial assets, your net assets, and all of that, fill in the details of the current officers of the business. And that's it. It's more like a notification. So if you don't also file it, there are penalties that are allocated on a yearly basis. So you can decide that, oh, you are not filing an annual return, or you decide that, okay, business has not been moving so well, you don't want to do anything. But the fact that business hasn't been moving so well doesn't mean you shouldn't file annual return. You have to constantly file it every year. And when people go online and they search for your business, because people do it a lot, I do that. When I want to interact with businesses I'm not so familiar with, I will go online to check if they are registered. And if I see that you are inactive, it's a little bit of a red flag, because you are not taking your business regulatory compliance seriously. So if it's inactive, people start wondering what the problem is. And if you want to even use such documents to apply for certain licenses, or obtain certain documents at the bank, or get a visa, even when they do their own checks and they go online, because this portal, CAC, has a public search, and they check and they see that it is inactive, you won't be allowed. You'll be told, go and rectify the problem, go and file your annual return. So it is important that you file your annual return. And also, when you make changes in the company, such as you change the secretary, you change the director, or there has been a transfer or surrender of shares, then you need to update these things on your company document. You need to notify CAC. You need to observe certain corporate governance rules immediately. Even for your company address, if you registered a company at point A, let's say in Nigeria, your head office was in Lagos, and then you relocated to Abuja, then you should effect it immediately on CAC. Notify CAC that there has been a change in your address, and the right document will be given to you, which is a status report showing the current status of the company. So when there are changes that are required or that have been made in the business, ensure that you make such changes on CAC as well. Then for taxes, ensure that you make your tax filings as at when you don't stall, because there are penalties for these things. And we know that the penalties, it might not be something that is pleasing, because as a business or as a company, you are going into such industry or whatever industry you decide to venture into for profit-making purpose. So it is important that you try to observe some of this regulatory compliance to avoid penalties and fines. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dawn. This is quite interesting. I would want us to go to Senegal and Côte d'Ivoire to speak with Estelle to tell us more about their post-incorporation services. Thank you very much, Estelle. Kindly take over.
So in Côte d'Ivoire, I will begin with Côte d'Ivoire. In Côte d'Ivoire, when you finish registering your business, you have to make sure that you go to the tax office to also complete the process there. That's when they will ask you for the registration number of the business, and then you also be given the declaration of tax existence. After this, you can open your bank account, and then all the information that you need to fill on your forms, they will request all of it. You must also have a number, and with the platform that is e-taxes or impôt in French. So when you go online, you will be able to declare your taxes and pay online. And when you do not do this, you will be fined. And some of the punishments that goes with not declaring your taxes is even imprisonment. So you must make sure that you comply. The second thing is that you would need a bank account, and without that declaration or DFE, you can't open a bank account. You can only open it after getting that certificate. And then you need to go to the Social Security Authority, which is called CNPS. And you need to also go and register your company with the CNPS, which is Social Security. There, they will also give you some documents, and then they will also give you a number, CNPS, which you would use for your business. And then you have to declare at least one employee. If you have multiple employees, you would like at least 10 employees, then you would also have to go to the authority in charge of labor. So you go to the labor authority, and then you also fill some forms there. They would first of all have a labor inspection, and that would help you to uphold employee rights. And then after doing all this, it would mean that you now have created your business. After creating your business, you have to make sure that you maintain good bookkeeping. According to the law, you must be accountable. It is demanded because the tax officers can come and check your work at any point in time, and you have to make sure that you have good keeping so that you can justify your taxes. And then with this, you have a type of bill or invoice that you must give. If you don't do this, it means that you have gone against the law. So you must comply with the accounting principles and standards. Even if you don't make any income or revenue, that means you still have to declare it. And this is called declaring a null income. And this is important because it helps the authorities follow your revenue flows. And then if there's a problem with your company, for example, there's a fire, or if there's a change of directors or any other important change, you have to inform the tax authorities. And how do you do this? You have to have minutes of your meeting. And through the minutes of the meeting, or through a report, you'll be able to say, this is the resolutions that were taken, this is what happened, and these are the changes. When you do all this, at the end of each year, you need to also declare your annual finances. Whether you pay or not, this is very different from your taxes. And you have to make sure that you declare. And this is the same thing for your taxes. Whether you make any profits or not, you have to declare your financial status annually. And then with all these things that I have said, I'm sure you can see the steps that you need after having created your business in Côte d'Ivoire. In Senegal, there are some documents that they give you, but it's not the end. After registering your company, you have to go to the tax authorities. You have to go to, say, CNS, which is the equivalent of CNPS, which is also the Social Security Authority in Senegal. And there you also need to have good bookkeeping so that you declare your taxes and pay. And at the end of the day, also make sure that you have your financial accounts well published. So this is how things work in the OHADA space for Senegal and Côte d'Ivoire. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Estelle, and thank you, Madam Interpreter, for making it also clear for us to understand what Estelle shared with us. Now I would like to take a quick from Beatrice. Can you walk us through that? Thank you.
Okay, so from what Estelle and Dawn shared with us, it's almost same as Ghana. Dawn mentioned the tax registration. Estelle also mentioned same, and Dawn mentioned getting work permits, which is same in Ghana. And also she mentioned the annual returns filing in Ghana. There are some regulatory requirements for every type of company registration. Sorry, for company limited by shares, irrespective of the nature of business. So once you register your business, you need to register with the Ghana Revenue Authority for tax. So you need to register for value-added tax, and also that's the income tax obligation and your pay as you earn for your employees. You also have to register with SSNIT, that is the Social Security and the National Insurance Trust. For your local employees, you have to pay that on their behalf every month. And you also need to register with the Ghana Investment Promotion Center. That is the outfit for investor services. You need to register with them. And you need to get your residence permits, work and residence permits to enable you live and work in Ghana. So don't even mention that for Nigeria, which is same for Ghana. And ideally, every company is required to register with the Environmental Protection Agency. However, it is highly required it's highly required of companies that is going to engage in manufacturing and processing of goods and other items that would have a higher impact on the environment. So if you are going to engage in that, you need to register with the Environmental Protection Agency. Then we come to the Data Protection Authority. You need to register with the Data Protection Authority and for fire certificates. And you also need to get what we call the business operating permits. You need to get it from your municipal assembly. So the locality that your office will be located, you need to register to get the permits from them. And I also like to touch on what Dawn said about the annual returns filing. She mentioned that even with the tax registration in Ghana here, you also have to have your tax identification, the taxpayer's identification number. And normally that application is done concurrently with the company registration process. Then the annual returns filing for company registration, it is done 18 months after the date of incorporation. So after the date of incorporation, from the 18 months, you need to start filing your annual returns with the Office of the Registrar of Companies. And before you can file your annual returns, you need to have an audited financial statement. If the company hasn't been in operation since incorporation, you'll be required to present a statement of affairs. So you need to get an auditor to help you generate one. Then you complete an annual returns form. Then you add that's either the audited financial or the statement of affairs. Then you submit it to the Registrar of Companies. And you also have to file your taxes for VAT, that is the value added tax, and also the PAYE. Just as Dawn mentioned, in Ghana here, you can also file online for your staff and also for the company. The PAYE is based on a percentage of your salary, and for the VAT is a percentage of the monthly sales that you made from operation. Then I've mentioned the social security that you need to do. And Dawn also mentioned something that I would want to refer. She said that in case you have amended anything about the company, let's say you have changed the company name, you have included an activity, or you have actually removed an activity, or you've changed the location or any other amendments that you have made, this has to be done at the Office of the Registrar of Companies. So you notify them, and it has to be done through a board resolution. So if you want to, there is a specific form for any amendments that you want to do. So if you want to change director, you fill Form 13. If you want to, Form 15, sorry, if you want to change company address issue Form 13, Form 17 for change of director. So basically, these are the post-incorporation requirements for every company that are registered in Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, our panelists. This question seems to be very, very important because the consequences of not adhering to some of these post-incorporation services can land your business into a very big trouble, which Estelle mentioned that it can even lead to imprisonment. I believe it applies to Ghana and Nigeria as well. So let's take note of this. If we have any intention or if we already have our business registered, let's also be mindful of the post-incorporating services that are necessary for our area of operation or the industry that we belong to comply with all the rules. Thank you very much for these questions, your answers. We are going to take our last discussion from our panelists, and then we would go straight to the Q&A to address all the questions that we have from our audience. If you still have any question bothering you that you think we have not addressed it, but you want us to do so, kindly put it down in the Q&A. We will take the questions after the panel discussions. But then if we do not address any other question that you asked from the Q&A, probably it means that the question you put in there requires more information. We will follow that up with probably an email to address your questions if we don't get to address them on this webinar. Also, some questions probably might be a straightforward question, which we may answer you from the chat box or the Q&A. If we do so, please do take the answers provided as such. The ones that need to be addressed here on this webinar, we will do them as well. We will also send you an email so that we would project our email address for you. If you have any further questions to ask, you can do that also. Finally, I want us to take our last discussion from our panelists, and then we will be wrapping up with our Q&A. So, okay, so in wrapping up, I would want to know if our panelists have any advice for foreign investors who are watching or who have joined us on this webinar to help them make informed decisions in doing business in West Africa. Estelle, can you give us any advice on whether a foreigner seeking to invest in Senegal or Cote d'Ivoire, what you would advise them to take note of?
Thank you for the question. It's a very good question. I would like to say that most of the time when people want to invest in Cote d'Ivoire or in Senegal, they don't take their time to understand the environment. To invest in Cote d'Ivoire, you need to understand your clients. That means that you have to do a market study, a real one. You have to take the time to study the environment. It's not because somebody was invested here and it worked for the person that it would be the case for you. In Cote d'Ivoire, there are a lot of opportunities, but you have to take your time and do a proper market study. In Senegal, I would say that that's more or less the standard, because in Senegal, they have a strong culture. And so you have to really understand Senegalese people before investing. And I would also like to say that you need to train yourself, as we are doing currently with this panel. You have to understand what is important, what must be done in terms of taxes, how things work, and how taxes are even declared in each country before beginning your business. So I think that this is even very more important before looking for clients. understanding the country, understanding the markets, understanding the people. Because most of the time we don't do that, and then later on we lose out. So you need to make sure that you do this at least for a while, maybe spend a year studying the market and the people before you enter. So on Senegal and Cote d'Ivoire, this is where I can say thank you.
Thank you very much, Estelle, for this advice. I'm sure our audience have taken notice of that as well. Let me quickly come down to Nigeria. Dawn, do you have any advice for our audience who are currently with you on this webinar and those watching us on Facebook or YouTube Live? What advice do you give to them if they are having the intention of settling in Nigeria to do business?
Okay, I would advise that they take notes of all of the things that has been said today from start to this point. And also, I know that people like to employ the do-it-yourself mechanism, but sometimes it's usually not the best. It's better you get somebody with experience to avoid certain pitfalls or certain mistakes. So, Firmus Advisory, we are well experienced in assisting you in setting up your business in different areas. We help you with market research, trade development, and regulatory compliance, accounting services, immigration services even. So please ensure that you do the necessary research about the industry you want to go into, and also you comply with all of the requirements that have been stated. You start preparing your mind towards investing in Nigeria. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dawn, for letting us know about what we have to do when we are coming to Nigeria to do business. Let me quickly come to Beatrice to wrap it up finally for us. She started the whole discussion and she's going to end it also for us. So tell us about the advice that people have to take into consideration when coming to Ghana to do business.
Okay, so well, from what Estelle and Dawn shared, I think same applies to Ghana. You know, you have to understand the regulatory environment. I will advise that you familiarize yourself with the local laws and regulations governing the foreign investments, manufacturing, and the service industries. You know, you have to consider the minimum capital requirement. So this is something that you should know. Once you choose a business structure, you know, I think we have given you the types of business structures in Ghana. So you should know which one that you would want to go in for. Once you know if it is going to be an NGO, then you don't have to worry yourself with the minimum equity requirement. But if it is the limited by shares, you have to consider that. And I will advise that you will engage local experts. You know, you have to consider hiring a legal or a business consultant who understand the regulatory landscape to help navigate the registration process. When you get somebody like that holding your hand, it will help you. And I also advise that you focus on a specific niche. I think I explained that you don't have to lump so many multiple business activities together. So once you concentrate on one or two core activities, rather than trying to cover multiple sectors. So this can simplify the registration processes for you and even the minimum equity requirements, as I explained early on. And you also have to conduct a thorough market research, just as Estelle mentioned. You need to do that because you have to consider the market dynamics in Ghana. So if you are going to sell, you have to know the products or the services that are in demand in Ghana. You have to consider all these things. And for some registration, like registering with the Ghana Free Zones Authority, you'll be required to present a business plan. So you have to get all these documents in place. You have to prepare thoroughly for your investments in Ghana. So this is the advice that I have for foreign investors and even local entrepreneurs to prepare very well for their company registration process. Thank you.
Thank you all very much, our panelists. And we thank you for staying on till this section of this webinar. So we are going to go straight to address some questions from the Q&A box. First of all, I have someone asking if the video, if the recording of this webinar will be shared with participants. Surely we'll share the link with everyone after the webinar. If you want to replay to understand or to equip yourself or remind yourself on some of the things that have been discussed, you will have the opportunity to do so. We would also have it on our YouTube channel, so you can subscribe and watch, and then also you will get to see all our videos that we post on our YouTube channel. You may also have it in either Instagram or Facebook, so that you can watch it later on. Thank you very much. Now, I have a question. How does registering a group of companies work in Ghana? So it means Beatrice is going to take this question. How does registering a group of companies work in Ghana? Can you register the group? Let me ask the sub questions and then you can take it from there. Can you register the group name and then add on the member companies as set up? And then add on as the member companies are set up. Will this need any additional registration? This is from Obio.
And Jen, please, can you take the second question again? I got how a group of companies can be registered.
The question is about whether you can, how you go about registering a group of companies, okay? And then he wants to know that, do you have to register the group name first before you do the sub? I mean, what makes up the group, or how do you do it?
Okay, to be able to register a group of companies as a foreigner, you need to have at least 2 existing companies incorporated in Ghana. So the third company can be registered as a group of company. So the name can, let's say, be Modcast. Let me use Modcast, the name Modcast Group of Companies. And in the nature of business, you specify that it is going to manage and finance. Then you list the 2 existing companies that have been registered in Ghana. So that is how you'll be able to register a group of companies. You first have to have at least 2 companies that are already existing and operating in Ghana. So the subsequent one can be registered as group of companies. And you specify that it is a group of company. So for the specification, it is done in the nature of business. So you mentioned that it is going to manage and finance. Then you list the names of the 2 already existing companies in Ghana. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have another question here from Chooks. He wants to find out if Firmus and its partners can assist companies through the process of obtaining mining license in Nigeria, Ghana, Senegal, and Ivory Coast. For this question, I can answer for them. It is a yes. And then the next is, what other services can you offer in the mining industry? In agriculture, what are the opportunities for acquiring or leasing land in these countries for agriculture? So, Chooks, with the second part of the question regarding what other services we can offer and all, we can share our profiles with you after this webinar to let you know all the services we offer here in Ghana, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, and Senegal. Then if you have any further things for us to assist you on, we can take it from there. Thank you very much. I'm sure your question is been answered. So the next question, Renato is asking if Firmus is in Abuja yet. We are not in Abuja yet. We are in Lagos, but we do work across board. So if you have any questions, you can send us an email and we will help you address your issue. Thank you very much. I have another question here. It says, I'm registered in Ghana and I'm seeking advisory from your team. Can you please share? Okay, so for those asking for contact details, we are going to share our emails. We have our emails in the chat box from the partners, and then the panelists all, we have the emails in the chat box. You can go back to the chat box and then pick any of them and send us an email. We would respond to you accordingly. Thank you very much. Okay, so another question, he says, I'm a Nigerian living in Ghana. I would appreciate some pointers on how I can get my business registered here in Ghana. I think those will follow the same. We have already given you information on the types, what you need to do and all that. If you need further information, as you have indicated in this question, kindly pick our email address, info@firmusadvisory.com. Send us an email and we would respond to you with the details as to how you can go about it and how we can help you. Thank you very much. Okay, so I would move to Nigeria, Dawn. Given the complexities involved, what guidance can you offer for foreign investors navigating the permit and license requirement in Nigeria, especially within the regulated industries?
Okay, so in Nigeria, there are actually no complexities per se in obtaining these licenses. So, for example, these processes are quite straightforward. Like I said, first thing, you register the company, obtain expatriate quota, and then a business permit, and then the person is sent for needs to be present in Nigeria before we can apply for a work and residence permit. So it's typically very straightforward. All you just need to do if you want to apply for this permit, just reach out to us and we'll start the process for you. So there are really no complexities per se. Even for other licenses, it's not so difficult to obtain. The Nigerian landscape is very encouraging towards businesses and foreign investors. Like I said, most of these regulatory bodies, they are very responsive and easy to approach. So it's very easy to set up your business. Yes, sometimes the share capital might be a challenge, but it's something that as an investor, if you want to go into business and if you also consider the benefits of investing in Nigeria, especially with our population and some sectors that are really, really booming at the moment, then you would work towards investing in Nigeria. Jane, I'm done, please.
Yeah, thank you, Dawn. Kofi Champon, you asked the question. You said, can you please speak to the issue of insurance liability requirement for different sectors? I think the question is a bit broad. If you say insurance liability, is it medical insurance or what form of insurance? So we would like to send you an email to get to understand you very well. And then since you want to know about different sectors, it means that we'll have to delve more deep into what you are asking for. So we'll send you an email and then after we can address your questions in there for you. I'm sure you are okay with this response. Okay. So now back to Estelle. There's a question here that in light of the evolving regulatory landscape, what strategies can a business adopt to ensure compliance, particularly regarding taxation and employee rights?
Great. So when you establish the business, you have the opportunity to benefit from tax rebates or tax exonerations based on the level of investment. And this is why it's important to learn what is needed, because there are a lot of investors who don't know this and they miss out on this opportunity. Once you have created your company, you also need to have an accountant. And this is where you can also make some savings when it comes to salaries, when it comes to taxes, and benefits from tax rebates or reductions. And then also when you are registering your business with the Social Security, you must make sure that you do this and you are in order. It's very important because there are a lot of businesses which do not respect the rules. So it's also important to make sure that you have your contracts in place when you are working with clients. And then also make sure that you pay what is required for Social Security. You pay the dividend. And there's a part that's of the taxes that are paid based on the salaries of your employees. And then you also need to pay a part of the Social Security contribution. So make sure that you pay these things. So this is what I can say as some strategies you can put in place so that in terms of taxes and labor rights, you are compliant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. It's been very great having you all on this call. I think we have learned a lot today. The webinar has been very, very educative.